"Your brother was always the favorite son," my mother confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled coldly and closed the photo album, the leather cover making a soft thud as it shut on 25 years of carefully curated family memories. "I know," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The afternoon sun filtered through the dusty blinds of my childhood bedroom, casting stripes across the faded quilt where we sat surrounded by boxes. My mother had called me home to help pack up the house where I'd grown up feeling like an afterthought, where my accomplishments had always been footnotes to my brother Andrew's headline achievements. Mom's fingers trembled slightly as they traced the embossed pattern on the album cover. At 62, she looked older than her years, grief and regret etching lines around her eyes that makeup couldn't disguise. Dad's death 3 months ago had broken something in her, not just her heart, but the carefully constructed facade our family had maintained for decades. "I didn't mean for it to be that way," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "Your father just connected with Andrew differently. They were so alike, and you were always so different," I finished for her. "Independent, difficult. I've heard it all before." She flinched at my tone. "I should have done more. I should have stood up for you." The validation I'd craved for 25 years arrived too late, landing hollow in the pit of my stomach. I stood up, needing space, needing air that wasn't thick with dust and memories. "Why tell me this now?" I asked, moving to the window to look out at the maple tree I'd climbed as a child, escaping to its branches when the weight of being second best became too heavy. "Dad's dead. Andrew's across the country, with his perfect wife and perfect children. What's the point?" "Because I'm selling the house," she said, her voice strengthening with resolve. "Because I don't want to carry these regrets to my new place. Because you deserve to hear it, even if it's too late." I leaned my forehead against the cool glass of the window, fighting the sting of tears. At 25, I'd built a life for myself, far from the shadow of familial expectations. I had my own apartment in Chicago, a rising career in architectural design, friends who appreciated my sharp edges rather than trying to smooth them away. I'd convinced myself I didn't care anymore about being the family afterthought. Yet here I was, heart racing at my mother's confession, feeling simultaneously validated and cheated. "Did Dad know?" I asked, still facing the window. "Did he realize what he was doing?" The silence stretched long enough that I turned to look at her. She sat small and diminished on my childhood bed, the photo album still in her lap like a burden she couldn't set down. "He knew," she finally admitted. "We fought about it sometimes, but he would say that Andrew needed more guidance, more attention, that you were so self-sufficient, so capable on your own." She looked up at me, eyes brimming with unshed tears. "He was proud of you, Elena. He just didn't know how to show it." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That's convenient. Praise my independence while using it as an excuse to ignore me." I shook my head, a lifetime of memories flooding back. Dad missing my high school art exhibition to attend Andrew's baseball game. The perfunctory congratulations when I got into Northwestern, while Andrew's acceptance to Stanford warranted a family celebration. Dad helping Andrew with the down payment on his house while telling me that struggling would build character. "Your father loved you," Mom insisted, a familiar refrain that had long lost its power to comfort. "In his way," I added, the standard qualifier our family had attached to Dad's conditional affection. She nodded, acknowledging the truth of it. "In his way." I returned to the bed and picked up the photo album, flipping it open again. The images chronicled our family history, Andrew front and center in most shots, me often at the periphery or missing entirely, at a piano recital, an academic competition, or simply lost in a book, while family life continued around me. "I used to think there was something wrong with me," I said, tracing a finger over a Christmas photo where 10-year-old me stood slightly apart from the family group, my smile not quite reaching my eyes. "Some fundamental flaw that made me unlovable." Mom made a small, wounded sound. Elena, no. Then I decided there was something wrong with him. I continued, turning pages, watching my teenage self grow more distant, more reserved in each successive photo. That Dad was too narcissistic to love someone who didn't reflect his own image back at him. Andrew was his mini-me, his second chance. I was just inconvenient. That's not fair, Mom protested weakly. But we both knew I wasn't entirely wrong. My father had been a complicated man, generous and charming to those in his favor, distant and critical to those who failed to meet his expectations. Andrew had learned early to mirror Dad's interests, ambitions, even his mannerisms. I had stubbornly remained myself. What's not fair, I said, closing the album again with finality, is that I spent my whole childhood trying to earn the love that came to Andrew automatically. I stood up, returning the album to the box marked keep in my mother's neat handwriting. And what's really not fair is that even now, with Dad gone, I still care. Mom rose from the bed and approached me cautiously, as if I might bolt. Perhaps I would have in the past, retreating to my tree or losing myself in sketching buildings. Structures with clear rules and predictable outcomes, unlike families. I thought you should know before we sell the house, she said, reaching out tentatively to touch my arm. I thought it might help somehow. I didn't pull away, which was progress. 3 months ago, at Dad's funeral, I had maintained a careful distance from both her and Andrew, playing my role as the dutiful but detached daughter. My brother had delivered a moving eulogy about our father's guidance and mentorship. I had sat silently, wondering if we'd even known the same man. "Does Andrew know you're telling me this?" I asked. She hesitated. "No, he still believes. He thinks your distance is by choice, that you've always preferred your independence to family." The irony was almost too perfect. The family narrative had been crafted so carefully that even Andrew believed I'd chosen the peripheral role assigned to me. "Of course he does," I said, moving away from her to continue packing. I picked up framed certificates and academic awards that had never found their way onto the living room walls, unlike Andrew's sports trophies. It's easier than acknowledging Dad's favoritism. Mom began folding clothes from my old dresser, her movements mechanical. "Your brother loves you, Elena. He's always looked up to you, even if he never said it." I paused, a debate trophy in hand. "That's a convenient thing to believe, isn't it? That underneath it all we're really one big happy family?" I placed the trophy in a box labeled "Donate." "The truth is, we're strangers who happen to share DNA and childhood trauma." "Is that what it was to you?" Mom asked quietly. "Trauma? I hadn't meant to use that word, hadn't meant to be so blunt, but there it was. The truth I'd been dancing around in therapy for years. Sometimes," I admitted. "Not always. There were good moments too. And there had been, rare occasions when Dad had noticed me, really seen me. The day he'd found my sketchbook full of building designs and said with genuine admiration, 'You've got a good eye, Elena.' The time he'd taken me to see the Roby House in Chicago, just the two of us, because I'd expressed interest in Frank Lloyd Wright. Small moments I'd collected and treasured like precious stones, polishing them in my memory until they gleamed brighter than the daily reality of being overlooked. "I wish," Mom began, then stopped herself. "What?" I prompted, suddenly needing to hear whatever confession was coming next. She sighed, setting down the sweater she'd been folding. "I wish I'd been braver. I saw what was happening, saw how it hurt you. But I told myself it wasn't so bad, that all families have their dynamics." She looked up at me, fully meeting my eyes, for perhaps the first time that day. "I failed you, Elena, and I'm sorry." The simple apology, unqualified and direct, caught me off guard. In our family, apologies had always come wrapped in justifications, if they came at all. I stood frozen, a shoebox of childhood mementos in my hands, unsure how to respond to this break in the family script. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued when I remained silent. I just want you to know that I see you now. I see how strong you've had to be, how hard you've worked for everything you've achieved. And I'm so proud of you, not because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you are despite everything. The box in my hands suddenly felt too heavy. I set it down on the desk, buying time as I tried to process her words. Pride was warming my chest, but anger still simmered beneath it. Anger at the years lost, at the recognition that came too late. I don't know what to do with that, I admitted finally. It's what I always wanted to hear, but now, it's complicated, she finished for me. I understand. Did she? Could she really understand how it felt to simultaneously crave and resent her approval? To want her love while being afraid to trust it? I got a job offer in Chicago last week, she said, changing the subject when the silence stretched too long. Teaching piano at a community music school. I thought maybe if I moved there after selling the house, we could get to know each other as adults. The revelation startled me. I'd assumed she would move to California to be near Andrew and her grandchildren. That had always been the plan Dad had talked about for their retirement, before cancer had abruptly rewritten the future. What about Andrew, the grandkids? I asked, unable to keep the suspicion from my voice. She smiled sadly. I love them, and I'll visit often, but Andrew doesn't need me the way he once did, and maybe it's time I tried to balance the scales, even if it's too late. I turned away, overwhelmed by the implications. My mother, in my city. Regular dinners, perhaps. The possibility of a relationship unmediated by Dad's preferences or Andrew's golden boy status. The chance to be seen, truly seen, after a lifetime in the shadows. But also the risk of hoping, of opening myself to disappointment again. I don't know if this can be fixed, I said honestly, gesturing between us. 25 years of patterns don't just disappear because we acknowledge them. I know, she said, but I'd like to try, if you'll let me. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. Andrew, as if summoned by our conversation. Hey sis, how's the packing going? Mom holding up okay? A simple message, seemingly benign, yet I could read between the lines. Are you taking care of Mom? Are you doing your duty to the family? Are you finally stepping up the way I always have? My thumb hovered over the screen as I considered my response. The old Elena would have sent something reassuring and brief, maintaining the peace, accepting my assigned role. Instead, I typed, Mom just told me I was never Dad's favorite. Were you aware of that family dynamic all these years? My finger hesitated over the send button. This was a grenade thrown into the careful narrative our family had constructed, that I was simply independent, aloof by choice, rather than sidelined by design. Sending it would force a reckoning, not just with Andrew, but with myself. Was I ready for that? I looked up to find my mother watching me, her expression a mixture of apprehension and resolve. He should know too, I said, answering her unspoken question. If we're really doing this, trying to build something honest, then it has to start with truth. She nodded slowly. You're right, no more pretending. I pressed send, then set my phone face down on the desk, not ready to deal with Andrew's response. It would come. Confusion, denial, perhaps anger. But that was tomorrow's problem. I can't promise anything, I told my mother, returning to the task of sorting through my past. But I'm willing to try, when you move to Chicago. The relief in her eyes was palpable. That's all I can ask for. We continued packing in silence, but it was different now. Not the strained silence of things unsaid, but the quieter space of new possibility. As I carefully wrapped mementos of a childhood spent in the margins, I allowed myself to imagine a future where I might no longer need to guard myself so fiercely against my own family. My phone buzzed again, Andrew's reply coming faster than I'd expected. I ignored it for now, focusing instead on the photo I'd just found tucked inside an old yearbook, me at 16. Standing proudly beside an architectural model that had won first place in a statewide competition. Dad wasn't in the photo. He'd had a golf game that day, but Mom was there, one arm around my shoulders, smiling with what I now recognized as genuine pride. I handed the photo to her. "I'd like to keep this one out of the albums, maybe frame it." She took it, studying it for a long moment. "I remember that day. You were so brilliant, so passionate about your design." I know," I said, sparing her from finishing the thought. We both knew what she wished, that Dad had been there, that he'd seen me, really seen me, in my moment of triumph. I reclaimed the photo and tucked it carefully into my purse, instead of one of the packing boxes. It would come with me to Chicago, not as a reminder of what I'd lacked, but as evidence of what had been there all along. My own strength, my passion, my ability to shine even without the spotlight. My phone buzzed a third time, insistent. Whatever reckoning awaited with Andrew, it wouldn't wait forever. But for now, in this dust-moted room with its stripped bed and half-packed boxes, something had shifted between my mother and me. Something fragile but real. A tentative bridge across years of hurt. "Let's finish this room," I said, reaching for another box, "and then maybe we could get lunch. There's a new cafe downtown I've been meaning to try." "I'd like that," my mother replied. And, for the first time that day, perhaps for the first time in years, her smile reached her eyes. I returned to packing, methodically sorting through the artifacts of a childhood spent in the shadows. The cold smile I'd worn when closing the photo album had thawed slightly, replaced by something more complex. Not quite forgiveness, not quite hope, but perhaps the beginning of both. My brother had been the favorite son. That was a truth that couldn't be undone, a reality that had shaped me in ways both painful and formative. But as I carefully wrapped a delicate glass figurine my mother had given me on my 16th birthday, a small, private gift I'd treasured precisely because it had been just for me, I allowed myself to consider that perhaps being the unfavored child had forged in me a strength my brother might never know. And perhaps that strength would serve me well in the difficult, necessary work that lay ahead. The work of truth-telling, of boundary setting, of possible reconciliation. I glanced at my mother, now carefully labeling a box of books I'd left behind when I'd fled to college. She looked up, caught my eye, and offered a small, tentative smile. I didn't smile back, not yet, but I didn't look away either. It was a start.